and ended up spending like 15-20 minutes doing quality commentary on the Diaz Mike Perry fight, and it ended up, I noticed, watched the replay, that I was muted for a large part of the commentary. So here we go, doing commentary again. So, the MVP promotion: Gina versus Ronda Rousey, and Nate Diaz versus Mike Perry. And I've said it before, if Gina would have followed my game plan, my advice to her, she would have been better off. 90% certain at least. I made a video before the MVP promotion, shared a game plan for Gina and said Ronda wants to get close, throw you, and use her grappling to submit you. And I said, as a game plan, keep your distance, circle Gina Chrono. Here's the game plan for you, my advice. Keep your distance, Gina Chrono. Run, go running, run away from her. Circle her, keep your distance, catch her, come in with kicks. Okay? Rinse and repeat. Keep your distance, catch her coming after you, charge you with kicks and stuff. And if she ends up being close, either to jump out of engagement range or use elbow strikes, knees, punches. Okay? And what would you have it? That was good advice. If I was gonna fight Ryan Garcia in boxing, and it ended up that I lost, okay, it'd be like, oh, would I rather have it that he beat me in 10 seconds in round one, or would I rather have it where it took 96 seconds for Ryan Garcia to knock me out? It'd be better the longer it takes to lose. If you lose, it's better the longer it takes to be defeated. See, I would rather have it that it took 10 seconds for Ryan Garcia to knock you out in round one, or that it took 96 seconds before you got defeated. Obviously, the longer it takes, and she could even have won before my advice. But what happened? Gina Carano charges Ronda Rousey. She grabs and throws her, use her grapple to submit her. And what's my game plan? Gina Carano, she want to get close and grapple and submit you. Keep your distance. Catch her, come in with teeps, catch her, okay. So, on the same promotion, I kind of reiterating some of the topics let's talk about. On the same promotion, they had Nate Diaz fighting Mike Perry. And I watched the highlight reel, and I watched the post-fight press conference that Mike Perry was talking about this. Okay. And Mike Perry said, it's like, I'm different. I'm like a built different welterweight. And I had to pull up to refresh my memory what a welterweight is. And I'm a welterweight, okay? Meaning, last time I weighed myself, I think it was 76 kilos, 76.4 maybe. Another time I weighed myself, I was 74 kilos or so. And searching welterweight to freshen up on what the weight is. And Mike Perry's a welterweight. So they fought at welterweight, Nate Diaz and Mike Perry. He has to be going by the UFC weight classes. In boxing, it's up to it's lower. Whereas in the UFC, welterweight is 71 to 77 kilos. A fighter's not going to be like, let's say 71 to 77 kilos welterweight in the UFC. They're not going to be like, well, I'm going to try to get to 72.5 kilos from a welterweight fight. They're going to look to be 77 kilos sharp, okay? As close to 77 kilos. I also thought, I'm 5'11", I'm a welterweight. And looking how Mike Perry presents, how built he looks jacked like a bodybuilder, he can't be too tall. He's got to be 5'6", 5'8", 5'9" at most. He's got to be 5'5", 5'6" and a half or something like this. Look at how jacked he was. And make your weight as a welterweight. Okay. Now you have to also remember that he dehydrated himself to weigh in and okay. So anyways, the point. After looking at comments, what people are saying, people are conspiratorial, which generally is a good thing. People being conspiratorial. I've seen comments, and I replied to some of them, where people are saying that Nate Diaz tapgate. Nate Diaz tapped out by Catman, okay? See, there's like people in the comments section saying Nate is a coward. He tapped, if you look closely, tapgate. It's like, okay, he's criticized for tapping secretly to the Catman is the conspiracy. So it's like Nate is a coward, they say. And then it's like, if you notice, look closely, he tapped the leg of Stitch Duran, the Catman, and kind of signal to Stitch that he wants out. That's a conspiracy. I'm not saying it, but it's that people, and they say he's a coward. Here's my take. Nate, even if he did tap, okay, he's not a coward. And I don't believe that Stitch Duran is a person that would do that, okay? So if Stitch Duran made a call that he's too hurt to keep fighting, most likely it was called for. And here's the point. So most likely the people saying that are guys that have never been in a street fight. They're not living a life like a training camp. They're not getting injured. They haven't been in a street fight or a sport fight. They're not training martial arts. And it's like, yeah, I would never tap someone for this. That's foolish. People are like in the ego. I would never tap. If you're a UFC fighter, I have a rule. I don't tap. Okay. What if Gina Krona had a rule to not tap? Rona gets an armbar, and if she doesn't tap, she can break her arm. And I don't know what it's going to be, the injury to the elbow or the shoulder being dislocated. But it's like, oh, if a fighter is a current UFC fighter, and it's like, I'm a tough guy. I don't call it quits. I don't tap. Okay. I don't tap. Okay. They get their arm broken, which means they can't have a training camp. Meaning a current fighter is looking to be able to, unless like this is my last fight, I'm retiring them. But it's like a person who's like Nate Diaz, then most likely he might be thinking about maybe having a career in boxing, getting boxing fights, getting paid big bucks to fight boxing. Maybe have other MVP promotion fights, something like this. And so in a situation like that, if Nate be like, I'm a tough guy, I don't tap. And then someone gets an armbar, it doesn't tap, break his arm. Now he can't do a training camp. He can't train for 6-12 months. He can't take a fight because he didn't tap and that led to an injury, understand? So, people in the comment section say Nate Diaz is a coward that tapped to Stitch Duran. Okay? And like the reason Stitch called the fight is conspiracy, and there's several people saying that. It's like if you look closer, he tapped the leg of Stitch Duran. So it's kind of like what they're saying is it's like signal. You're sitting in court and your lawyer, like you're stuck on, yeah, your honor. So I was, and your lawyer kicks you in the leg as a signal to be like, shut up, so for this. It's like tap like that was like he's suddenly like tapping the leg of Stitch Duran to be like, okay, like call the like, doctor stop it or something. Okay, say I get me out of fight. Now, and they're saying he's a coward for that. Okay, he's not a coward for that. Even if he would go, I quit. Okay, he wouldn't be a coward. I wouldn't look down on him for that. I would look down on an athlete, combat athlete, if they break their wrist, a finger in the fight, they roll their ankle. Okay, they get a cut where they go, I quit. Okay, they tap out. It's not a fight to the death where it's like you're fighting for your life, okay? They're fighting sports, they're looking to have a career where it's like if you don't quit in such situations, you can have an injury exasperate to a point where you can't fight for 2 years after that. Okay. So Nate Diaz looking at it. Mike Perry is more a power puncher, is more physically powerful. The Diaz brothers are more cumulative damage. Their strength has been cardio. Both the Diaz brothers, their strength in the UFC has been cardio and volume of punches. Be able to throw like 300 punches per round for 5 rounds, okay? And being, that's like a strength, I'm saying. Their strength is mostly cardio, and none of them have really been known to be power punchers, got like one punch knockout power. But they've been relying more on cardio power and being able to throw 300 punches per round and tire out the guy, and then kind of cumulative damage build up to a knockout or do you understand? So Mike Perry was more physically powerful. I would be surprised he's been on roids either. Mike Perry was super powerful, more like explosive. His knee strikes, elbow strikes, punches, really powerful. Here's the point. I agree with the stoppage, okay? So, looking at the highlight, it looks like it was an elbow strike that opened up a cut in Nate's forehead. Either this one that the Mike Perry did, it was more like dragging it than really like explosive and hitting fast and hard like Whippy. It looked more like he just dragged kind of his elbow over Nate's face, and then there's another elbow strike, and then there's a knee. So I think that the cut might have opened from the elbow strikes and exacerbated by the knee strike, okay? So I think he might already been cut by one of the two elbows that I caught. Like one of these and then one of these, okay? One of those opened him up, I would guess. And then the cut was exacerbated by a knee strike by Mike Perry, okay? If not, it was opened by the knee strike, okay? So, got a cut, let's say it was here, bleeding profusely. that interferes with the ability to intelligently defend himself because he can't see, it gets in your eyes, okay? Also, if you have an opening here, even if it's like 2 centimeters of a cut, if a finger gets in there, you can have an infection. The risk is if it doesn't, if you don't stop it, you have a cut, even if it's just a centimeter like here, and it's bleeding profusely. You keep fighting, it could, more punches, elbow strikes, could rip it open like an Indian scab, where like the cut can be like ridiculous like this. And that could lead to, oh, Nate Diaz can't ever take punches to the head in a sport fight anymore because he's got this like injury there. It could be, if it's an opening, dirt can get in there. A finger could get in there. So I don't like to say, yeah, I think he tapped to the ram. Even if he did, I wouldn't think he's a coward or fought for it. Understand? If a combat athlete rolls the ankle, they feel like the wrist is broken or there's something up with the wrist and the doctor doesn't notice and they go and like quit, I don't follow for that. They have a sport fighting career. So if you're looking to, like, you feel like you've broken a finger and you keep fighting, you're risking is like break it really bad to a point where you can't fight or do training camp again. So I believe that my elbow strikes are at least as powerful and this as this pro combat athlete Mike Perry. I've thrown elbow strikes at least as hard as he has in that match in training on the ball. Possibly harder. Okay. And we're both welterweights. And I'm kind of in between Nate Diaz and Mike Perry as towards my physique. Okay. So anyways, the point. Mike Perry was more physical, powerful. Nate Diaz, the Diaz brothers are relying more. The style is cumulative damage, outcard your opponent. Volume, okay. They've been winning fights. So basically, the Diaz brothers, Nick and Nate, they've been winning fights behind the corner to throw 300 punches per round. And like cumulative damage building up to knockout. They've never been known to have like one punch knockout power, as some fighters do. And it's more common in the heavyweight and light heavyweight division than welterweights and featherweights. Like really powerful punching power, okay? Like one punch knockout power. So it's kind of interesting how it's similar to Nate versus Robbie Lawler. Understand? Mike Perry versus Nate Diaz is similar to Nick versus Robbie Lawler, who was also like a jack dude, power puncher, not as strong in cardio, and there's some punches thrown in the Nick versus Lawler fight that if they would have landed, Nick Diaz would have been out. So, uh, yeah, I don't think, I'm not convinced that Nate Diaz tapped to Stitch Duran. And even if he did, I wouldn't fall him for that. Okay. So, I'm gonna finish up. I'm not a fan of Mike Perry. I was rooting for Nate Diaz in the fight. And instantly, Nate Diaz calls for a rematch on the, I think, post-fight press conference. Now, here's the thing. He's in a position now where there's like credible that he might be able to do a rematch and fight again within 12 months. If the fight had been stopped and then cut that was already being profusely got exasperated, it could be that he could have, like, oh, well, you got something going on where you can't do a training camp and you can't fight for like 24 months or something like this. So I'm gonna finish up. And the reason I made this, I went live to talk about this before and I watched the replay. Oh, it was muted. And go live talk about it again. So I gotta finish up.